You said that you disagree with the women only dating up comment.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, I don't think women only date up. I think it's plain and simple.
Well, hypergamy is just the rule in general. Like if you, I don't recall the exact number, but women, for example, overwhelmingly, I think it's like 93% of women date men who earn more than them.
Yeah, but you are generalizing. I just don't think it's true, though.
You don't think?
Yeah,
what
but
is
it's
true? Hypergamy is the rule.
It's a general statement, right? So when we're talking about hypergamy, you're not saying all. Nothing exists inside of a monolith. There's always going to be exceptions to every rule. It's the exception that proves the rule in this case. So, like if I were to ask you, if all things were equal, let's assume for a second you had two perfect clones, one man. You like the personality, in other words, and it was perfect clone, but one of the clones had millions of dollars and lots of really nice shit, and the other one didn't. Wouldn't you pick the one that had the really nice shit and the $1 million?
But then that goes on another level of like what mental they're at. Like, are they also like not go-getters?
All things are equal. They're the exact same. The only distinction
then how
is that one has a lot more shit than the other.
Max donated $100. Body count doesn't necessarily matter overall. Women just need to understand that if you sacrifice your own body, you don't qualify for a higher caliber man. High status, tall, handsome, leader.
Tall is crazy. That's
Tall is crazy.
Oh, there's short kings out there. That's rough.
Like that
How tall are you?
In Pretty Woman.
5'8".
Yeah.
5'8". Do you have a height preference at all?
No.
No? You date a guy shorter than you?
I did. My ex.
You did?
My one ex.
Okay, there you have it.
But
did you guys want to continue with your...
Yeah, if you don't mind. So I guess the point is just to say that if the option is available, if you have two men who are roughly equal in your eyes as far as personality and things like this go, they're both pursuing you, but one has an amount of resources which is far superior to the other, wouldn't you generally go with the one that has a lot more in the way of resources?
Of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's basically all the descriptor of hypergamy is that men don't differ particularly too much between man to man other than perhaps in looks, height differentials, things like this. But if you have them and they're close enough and one has a lot more resources than another, generally speaking, women seem to go for the one that has more resources. That's the point.
I don't know. It's because you said men are generally like similar, right? That's kind of a crazy statement.
Why?
Because that's not true. Like, depending on where you are in life, and it's just your surroundings and who you meet. Like, I'm not going and seeking these really wealthy men or looking for these wealthy men. It's just who's around me, right? So like, if it's
we're not saying that you are, though. The point isn't to say that you're actively seeking or gold digging. There's plenty of women who don't actively seek and gold dig. The point is just to show that if the options are available, even if a man could maybe perhaps be, I don't know, slightly better on the personality, but just slightly less better looking and have more money than the alternative, we're just saying that the chances that the woman will go for the alternative becomes much higher. Well, then, doesn't that stand to reason?
Well, there's vice versa. If it's the same woman, the same thing with a man. Like
no,
a man would...
It doesn't seem to necessarily be the same case for men. So men seem to not seek women out specifically for resources or vice versa. Or I mean, whereas vice versa, that does seem to be the case, is what I mean.
Well, at least let's pretend that it's old money. Let's say, like, I know there's a lot of problems with certain like men where they're like, oh, I don't want a working woman. Let's pretend it's old money and she inherited that, and it's two of the exact same, and one has tons of money and the other doesn't. You would also date the woman with tons of money?
You mean if all things were equal,
all
they were
things
the
are
exact
equal,
same
yes.
woman?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. And I think every man would say that that's true.
Yeah.
But the point here is the reason we start with all things equal is just to break down, okay, you and I are in agreement that if there's resources which are added, it does add value, right? The distinction here for hypergamy is just to say that women seem to seek that value out a lot more than men do. That's the point. Just generally. It's not always the case, but it's just generally the case.
But do you
so
also...
we start even. I agree with you. For men and women, that would matter to a degree. I just think it matters a lot more to women. And this is what we see in the data and the trends.
But do you think that that's trending downwards as like newer generations?
No, it seems not to be trending downwards. As materialism trends upwards, it seems that we have more of this problem, not less of this problem. So, I mean, absent materialism, if men have lots of resources and you can net a man who has lots of resources, wouldn't that be your preference? Whereas for men, if you ask them that question, they say, some say yes, but most say not really. It's not really the thing that they're after is resources. Mostly after things like beauty, the ability to become a good mother, things like this. They're not really after your resources.
So you're saying Gen Z, Gen Alpha are answering that?
Answering what?
Saying that they are still seeking out women who are good mothers and beautiful. That's still Gen Z, Gen Alpha.
Yeah, well, Gen Z is actually trends more conservative in the smaller percentile. So yeah, they do tend to answer that way. Interestingly enough, as millennials get older and their priorities change, the same thing. Men seem to answer that way then as well.
May I add something? So I agree with the initial statement that women typically look for men that yeah, exactly. So, but I think where you're coming from is that, like, if you were to typically ask any woman in this generation, they're not going to say that outright. Yeah. Plus, in the dating world, there's not really typically a lot of suitors that bring that to the table as far as resources go.
Yeah, that's why we have such a lopsided issue, which is that as women are able to make more and more and more money, especially in resident fields like the medical field, things like this, men as the provider of resources, this has actually taken the market and flipped it on its head. So now there's actually a lot less men who are desirable from the biological trend of women. So they're still looking for men who make higher resources, but right now, women make a lot in the way of the marketplace when it comes to money, home ownership. There's actually more homeowners who are single, and there will be more homeowners who are married in just 10 years who are women. So over men, which is crazy. So all that hypergamy is looking at is saying, listen, one of the big problems in the dating market is as women's resources drastically increase, you start to see that the lopsided way that they pick men has moved to a smaller and smaller percentage. That's the point.
So wouldn't that kind of contradict itself? That women, since it flipped its side on its head, now that...
Grid 1 Motorsports donated $100. Seems simple. Men will not leave hot poor women to date ugly rich women. Women will leave an attractive poor man to date ugly rich men 100%. Brian, next time you need a remote in, put me in, coach.
Hey, Grid 1, good to see you in the chat, man. Thank you for your TTS. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, Grid 1 is awesome. Anyway, what's the contradiction you say?
So that women, like that you just said, the market kind of flipped itself on its head. So women are, creating their own resources. So now, wouldn't that mean that women are not seeking men for resources anymore?
No, they still, what's interesting about this trend is it makes my point, not yours, which is that as the market flips itself on the head and women are able to increase their resources, they seem to be vying for a smaller pool of men who have more resources than they have, whereas men are not following that trend.
Agreed.